it's Miss Ferguson. I am reporting live from my living room for some fun facts with Miss Ferguson, because just because we're home doesn't mean that the learning needs to stop. And I'm excited to share these videos with you guys over the next couple weeks just to keep ourselves kind of engaged and thinking, because I know that sometimes when you're home you can kind of get stuck in your head. So let's learn some fun stuff. And I thought that a really good topic to start us off, since we don't have it right now, is school. So today we will be talking about the history of public schools in the United States. Let's get going. So schools have actually been around for a really long time. Some of the earliest schools started in the 1600s when the Pilgrims and the Puritans came over to New England. Now we'll learn about the Pilgrims later on this year, but remember that these were people that came over from Europe in the 1600s, mostly for religious freedom. Now these schools in the 1600s were a little bit different than we think about school today. They might have learned some basic math, usually some languages, in this case usually Latin or Greek. But the purpose was to study religion. If you couldn't read, you couldn't read your religious text. So parents did believe in the importance of literacy, just like we do today, but the reason was a little bit different, maybe. You can see from some of the pictures, the schoolhouses looked really different. This red one up here is actually in Massachusetts. It's one of the first Puritan schoolhouses that was ever constructed. So fast forward a few more years, remember that the Pilgrims came over in the 1620s. So this is a little bit later when Boston was established. Now, Boston did not look like it did today. However, the first public high school in the country was actually Boston Latin, and Boston Latin still is a school today. Again, it looks different. Up here is a drawing of the first Boston Latin, and you can see down here, that's Boston Latin today. And kids still go to high school at Boston Latin, which is really cool considering how old that school is. So throughout the 18th century, so now we're talking about the 1700s, the focus on schools switched a little bit, okay? So for a long time, schools were kind of village schools. So kids would go to school while their parents were in the field or working or hunting or building the colony. And now it switched a little bit. So the people that were going to school were the people that had money. So these public schools became much more religious and private, meaning that you had to pay and usually take some kind of exam to go there. Now, some of the earliest private schools in the United States were actually Phillips Academy in Exeter, Deerfield Academy, Phillips Academy in Andover, and Brooks Academy. Now, these schools only served male students at the time, and all of these schools are still open today. In fact, my cousin Robbie went to Brooks Academy, which is really cool. Here, that top picture is Phillips in Exeter. It's one of my favorite places to ride my bike, actually, because I'm from New Hampshire. This is on a bike ride in the fall, and here's Adam chilling on the steps of one of the first private high schools in America, which is pretty cool. So during this time, the founding fathers, remember that this is kind of pre-revolutionary, before the United States was even a country. We were still colonies and part of England. Thomas Jefferson didn't really like what was going on with all of these private schools. He believed that schools should be public and that more people should be able to go to these schools. So Thomas Jefferson decided that not only should schools be public, should everyone be able to go, that they should be funded by taxes. And that means that when you live in a certain place, you contribute money to that place, and some of that money would go to the schools. And that's kind of like what happens right now. So we go to Newton Public Schools, and the taxpayers of Newton help to pay for those schools. In the early 1800s, so this is post-revolutionary, so now this is the United States has been established as its own independent country. Schoolhouses were often just one room, and students of all ages learned in a single room with a single teacher. You can see a picture of one of the colonial schoolrooms in America. Now, this could be kids from kind of kindergarten, first grade, so 5, 6 years old, all the way up through high school. Now, most kids didn't go to school as long as kids go now. Many kids would go to school maybe till 14 or 16 years old, but they would all be learning in the same room. Different things, but led by one teacher. So you can imagine how different that would be. Now, there were no smart boards. We didn't have Chromebooks back in the 1800s. So students often used a piece of slate, which is similar to a chalkboard, to practice their arithmetic, math, letters, and certainly cursive would have been taught at that time. So let's go back to Massachusetts and zoom in a little bit. So Horace Mann, which should sound familiar in Newton, became the Secretary of Education in Massachusetts in 1837. And he had a very important role in kind of creating public schools as we see them today. Horace Mann really wanted to create a profession of teachers. So these were people that were, mostly women still, that were trained to educate kids. And they learned how children developed and certain curriculum that would be helpful to teach the kids. Horace Mann really also believed that all kids should be able to access education, both boys and girls, people from all different backgrounds. At this time, still separate, however. But he did believe that all students should have access to school. This is a picture of Horace Mann, and you can see this is Horace Mann Elementary School in Newton, Massachusetts, which is really cool. The other thing that Horace Mann really advocated was for different classrooms for different ages of students. So he established first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, and all the way up to high school. So you were learning with kids that were in your age group, and you were learning content that was appropriate to your age group. So now that everyone could go to school, we had to focus on getting students, regardless of their skin color, in the same classroom. Now, this didn't happen until the 1900s, specifically 1954, when the Supreme Court, which is the top court in the United States, came down with a court ruling, which is a decision called Brown versus Board of Education. And what this court decision said was that all kids, boys, girls, different colors, different backgrounds, different races, should be able to learn in the same classrooms. Now you can see this is one of the first integrated classrooms in the United States, and you can see that the kids almost don't know how to interact with each other because they had never really learned with children that looked different from them. One of the big names during this time, and I hope you do some more research on this little lady, was a little girl called Ruby Bridges, and she was the first African-American child to go to a segregated white school in Louisiana. And when she went to school, she actually had to be escorted into the building by police because it was kind of a dangerous situation for her. And she's tiny. She's a little kid, but she had the bravery to go to school. And she had really special teachers that really embraced her and welcomed her to the school, and it ended up changing education all around the country. So today's schools look way different than they used to. We have different classrooms filled with different kids, different grades, ages, and needs. We have Learning Center and ELL for languages and international studies. We have art rooms and science rooms and computer labs, music rooms, theater, PE. So schools today look a lot different. This is our classroom in Newton, and you can see it looks a lot different than those classrooms that we talked about a couple of minutes ago. One of the big things that's changed in the last century, the last 100 years, was technology. For example, when I went to elementary school, we might have had one computer in our classroom, but it didn't do a whole lot. Maybe it printed, maybe you could type a few things on it. Now in our classroom, we have computer carts and Chromebooks and internet that all kids can access. And I mean, look what we're doing today, right? We're learning from our homes, using the computer and using internet to stay connected. So it's pretty cool. So where should we go from now? So at the end of Fun Facts with Miss Ferguson, I'm always going to give you some suggested activities. Now, these are activities that you do not have to do, but will kind of get you thinking about the topic of the day, which today is schools. So my first suggested activity is to play school. You guys always are joking around that you want to be the teacher. Here's the opportunity. Teach someone in your family something, set up a classroom, be really creative. Make a model or a shoebox of an early classroom. I'm going to link this presentation on your Google Drive so you can see some of the pictures. Look closely at the pictures. The desks look really different, the schoolhouses are really different, and it would make a really cool model. Vital journal entry from the perspective of a student in a 17th century classroom. So imagine yourself going back in time, right? And do some perspective writing. There was no technology. You would have been in a classroom with maybe 40 or 50 kids of all different ages. One room, one teacher. Imagine what that would have been like. Do some more research on Ruby Bridges. She's really awesome. You can find tons of age-appropriate information about her online, and I really welcome you and suggest you to learn a little bit more about that time in history and some of the students that really changed the course of history. Find some chalk and practice your letters just like kids did back in the day, whether that's on a chalkboard in your house or go get some fresh air. Just because we need to stay at home doesn't mean we can't go outside. Maybe practice your cursive on your driveway. And last but not least, we're learning about opinion writing right now. I would love to hear your thoughts on how we can make school even better. So if you want to log on to your drive and send me some notes or some sentences about what you think we could do to make our school even better.